D, fiduciary responsibilities. Again, that's the same. Cold AC. Again, I think you'll just have 2 questions on there. Transfer of title is our next block. I had 5 test questions on my last one, it says. But understanding what title insurance is, it's insurance so that if a title defect arises once you take ownership, you're not paying to settle that defect out of your own pocket. You've got insurance protection to cover it. Title searches, that is where we search to see if there are any title flaws, any liens, any encumbrances that would affect the value or the ability to transfer the property to another owner easily. An abstract is a written, I'm going to call an abstract the autobiography of the property. It's the actual written document that tells the story of all of the title, anyone that's owned it, any of the encumbrances. It's going to have the chain of title on it, owner to owner to owner. I think a big one for you is going to be the deeds section. Again, the purpose of it is to show that transfer of title occurred from a current owner to a new owner. And it's going to show the type of ownership that they have. So do they own it in severalty, joint tenants, tenants in common? Did they get to buy everything of the property? Or were the surface or subsurface rights reserved? Okay, it's going to contain all of those elements. There are several types of deeds. And the 3 I'm going to have you focus on is general warranty deed, special warranty deed, and quit claim deed. General warranty deed is your highest protection. This is what the lender loves because title flaws are warranted in the past, present, and future, basically. It's the cleanest type of title that you can take and it has the most warranties attached to it. A special warranty does not have as many warrants on it. It basically is warranting against any encumbrances that could have incurred during the current owner's possession. A lot of times a bank will use this after they've gone through the foreclosure process with a seller. They take that house back into their inventory and then they go to resell it to the public. They'll offer a special warranty deed because they don't know what that previous owner did that could create a future encumbrance. They only know that they didn't, they're only warranting that they didn't do anything. Okay, then a quit claim deed is a way to just basically clean up title. It could be used to add a buyer. Let's say I'm going into a nursing home and I want my daughter added to title so that she can help me make decisions about my property. If we need to sell it to cover for my nursing home care or something like that, we're just quickly adding her to the title. It's a quit claim deed again. Another time a quit claim deed works is between divorcing spouses. We want to get one of them off of title per the divorce decree. This exact thing, though, to know about a quit claim deed, I think best for the exam is a quit claim deed offers no warranty. I add my daughter to title. She is now responsible for all the encumbrances and title deficiencies that go with it. The mortgage, mechanics lien, anything like that that would have happened. Okay, so it offers no warranty at all, no protection. Quit claim deed, not quick claim deed, as most agents call it. This talks about the elements of a deed. And there were several on there, and I had 3 that I really pulled out for you that I thought were good for you to know. One was that idea around void versus voidable. Same as what we just discussed with contracts. Voidable would be the category of a minor or someone who maybe is temporarily insane. Void would be someone who is already declared mentally incompetent in a court of law. They are not allowed to sign any contracts, including a deed. The other 2 that I pulled out was 1, a deed needs notarized in front of a notary public. Again, I'm going to suggest you become a notary. sos.iowa.gov. You can sign up to be a notary for 3 years, I believe for $30. They will also have a list of where you can get a stamp. And I would buy a stamp that does not have an expiration date on it. That way, every time you renew your notary, you don't also have to buy a new stamp. Leave that blank. But I would get a notary and a stamp because you'll be able to notarize deeds for your sellers. The third one is delivery and acceptance. The deed only passes to the new owner when it has been delivered to them and they accept it. Not when I sign it, but when it's delivered and accepted. And there's some other elements, obviously, of a deed in there too. There's several other elements. Those were 3 that I think are unique that we maybe haven't, that would be great for the exam. Okay. Then the importance of recording, and the reason we want that on public record is if I sell my property to you and it's not recorded, who's to say that I can't fraudulently try to sell it to someone else? So having it on public record lets everyone know the true owner of the property, as well as who has any priority interest in it, who's filed any liens, or anything that would affect title, that would affect ownership as well. This talks about the responsibility of an escrow agent, and closing things in escrow means this. We've got a closing company with an escrow account. Again, escrow accounts are other people's money. We bring all of the fees in that the buyer needs to close. The value of the property on the purchase agreement and any closing costs that they'll owe their bank. That comes in as a bundle, and then we itemize all of those dollars and give them a place to go until we've settled out a 0 balance. So all that money coming in from the borrower, some of it's going to go to their lender for closing costs and originating the loan. The rest of it's going to go to the seller. And from that, the escrow company is going to pay a host of seller paid fees, paying off their mortgage to their current lender, brokerage fees for commission dollars, abstract charges, a host of things. And then whatever the remaining balance is on that, the seller gets as a check. No, hopefully they've got proceeds that they get as a check to now do whatever they wish. For you, hopefully they're buying another property. They're using that as a down payment. Closing statements and TRID disclosures. We talked about this a little bit with RESPA and Truth in Lending, but that closing disclosure again is that itemized list of everything that everyone's paying. Prorated items. This, for the most part for you, is going to be property taxes. And I want you to pay attention to whether the test question says accrued or prepaid. Accrued means the seller owes the buyer a credit at closing. Prepaid means the buyer owes the seller a credit at closing. So let's say property taxes, for example, this is for the national exam. If you're used to doing paying taxes in Iowa as a homeowner, ignore that for the national. But let's say the tax bill is due January 1st, 2021 for the year 2021. That means the seller prepaid it for the entire year. So if the buyer closes on August 30th, they owe the seller a credit for the time they've taken ownership. Okay, that's prepaid. Accrued means that that tax bill for 2021 isn't due until December 31st. So the seller owes the buyer a credit for when they own the home, but the bill isn't due yet. Now, for the most part on the exam, they're going to tell you how to figure property taxes based on two theories. There's a 360-day theory and a 365-day theory. I'm going to gamble and say you're most likely to have to work with the 360-day theory. It's much easier for exam purposes. That way we're not counting out days on our toes and fingers, trying to remember a nursery rhyme, 30 days past September, April, June, and whatever. I think they're going to use the 360-day plan, which is 360 divided by 12 gives you a monthly rate. Then divide that by 30 days gives you a daily rate. So just keep in mind, if you're closing on June 13th and the seller owes the buyer a credit, that's 5 full months and 13 days. Don't just think June 6th is the 6th month, so it's 6 months, okay? Because they will put that wrong answer as an option for you, and you'll think, oh, the answer's there, so it must be right. And they're tricking you, so just be careful of that. Property taxes and income taxes, again, I think that's going to be something related to prorated. I would know the term foreclosure and short sale. Foreclosure is kind of that joke I've been making of pay, stay. That's where the bank takes the house back from you. Short sale is when the property owner still owns the property. We're asking the bank to sell it short on funds, not short on time, but short on funds, meaning we've got a mortgage for $180,000, but the market has shifted and now it's only worth $160,000. So we're asking the bank to forgive that $20,000 between what we owe and what we can now sell it for. A question you might have pop up is that $20,000, for example, does the borrower owe any sort of tax obligation on that? Because they basically got money given to them in a forgiveness. And according to the Mortgage Relief Protection Act, I believe it's what it's called, that originated in 2007 and has been extended, no one owes income tax on that forgivable money, that forgiven money. Okay. Any questions? Practice of real estate. This was my whopper of 12 questions the last time I took the exam. And I think your big ones are going to be around fair housing and antitrust laws. I would say fair housing is maybe going to feel like 2 to 5 test questions, and then you'll have 1 on the state. And antitrust laws, I would say I had 4 when I audited the last time. So I would say plan on 2 to 4. So half of what you get, 75% of the questions on this list could come just from antitrust laws and fair housing. Big deal. So let's talk about trust and escrow accounts. Again, a trust or an escrow account, other people's money. And the contract or an agreement is going to dictate what happens to that money. So you as a brokerage or a salesperson don't get to determine what happens to it. That's up to your clients in the transaction. So we put that separate in an account so that it's not with general funds. Okay, we cannot commingle or convert trust funds to general funds for a brokerage. And another good reason a broker wants a trust account is if they've got to file bankruptcy because they haven't been selling any houses, that trust account is now secure. It is not part of their bankruptcy because that was kept separate in a trust account. Let's say the broker dies. That trust account is separate, so it does not go along and become a part of his estate. So his kids that are maybe in his will wouldn't inherit money that doesn't belong to them. So that's why other people's money, protecting it in a separate account, is so important. We do not want to commingle general funds with these trust funds. General funds are for paying salaries, rent to the building for the brokerage, Mid-American, printer and internet service, whatever. Escrow account, again, is other people's money. So conversion and commingling, big no, 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 no. Okay. Federal fair housing laws. I would know your protected classes. Absolutely. I would just memorize those. And I'm going to use our book again because I've got such good talking points in here and I don't want to forget any of them. But your protected classes from the Civil Rights Act of 1968 is race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, or disability. This is on federal. This is on federal. So if they ask you which of the following are not protected, Arabs, Jews, a single mother with 2 children, or homosexuals, homosexuals on the national exam are the class that's not protected. It's not on that list. Okay. The next one is prohibited conduct, and redlining, blockbusting, and steering go hand in hand as kind of a triage on the exam really well. Redlining has to do with financing. It literally was there literally was a time where banks had red lines on maps, and if you gave a loan to a minority within the red lines on that map, you were known to have made a bad investment. Banks wouldn't let you do it. Okay. I would, if any of you have an interest in learning more about redlining, there are some great redlining videos that I found on YouTube. Just search redlining. Blockbusting is also known as panic steering, and it's when we get our sellers motivated to list and sell their home by creating the idea that a protected class is going to enter into their neighborhood and it's going to ruin the value of their properties. Steering is what we do to a buyer when we steer them to a different neighborhood based on one of these protected classes, giving the impression that they want to live where their type lives. Okay. So blockbusting, seller, steering buyer, redlining, financing. The Americans with Disabilities Act. This is not a housing law, yet it does set standards around employment and access to public goods and services. Our exemptions say that an owner of a property that does not use discriminatory advertising and does not hire a real estate professional is exempt. Okay, the owner of the property, no real estate professional involved, no discriminatory advertising used, they are exempt. Now, I want to run through my list of notes here with you around these protected classes. Number 1, the Fair Housing Act is administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD. Great test question if I were writing an exam. Family status. This can be as small as one person or an actual family, including a pregnant woman or anyone in the process of adopting children. And again, we cannot do advertising that says no children allowed, adults only. We can't say children only floor, only children can live on the first floor, so they're not noisy to our long-term elderly clients. However, housing for older people is exempt when we've got areas that are 55 and older communities. Disability is a great opportunity. I want to point out a few things for you. A person with AIDS is protected under the class of disability, and so is someone in drug treatment. Now, if they've been charged with a drug crime, they are not protected, but if they are in a treatment capacity, they are protected. Landlords must make reasonable accommodations to a person with disability. However, it can be at the person with disability's expense, and they can be required to return it back to its original condition minus basic wear and tear. A reasonable accommodation could be adding grab bars in a bathroom. It could be maybe even lowering light fixtures. It could be an assigned handicap parking spot. And the big one is going to be a service animal in a no pets building. Now, we cannot raise their deposit and give them a pet deposit. But again, we can require them to bring the property back to its original condition minus basic wear and tear if that animal were to do damage. The other one on this list that I think is worth noting is any questions around church organizations or private memberships to a certain party. They've got some exemption that says they can offer housing only to their members. Now, beyond that, if we've got a Methodist church that's renting a parsonage to only its members, we can't say only our Black members that are also Methodists and members. It's got to be to we can do it to members, but that's the only stipulation. There's no discrimination beyond that. And if the church uses it for commercial use, meaning they're opening it up to everyone, not just their members, then all of the fair housing laws do apply to them. Another big section to review is we've got fair housing issues in advertising. Again, the advertising section that I think would be most useful to you is not applying in or not advertising in specific channels or newspapers that are just maybe for only Spanish-speaking clients, really advertising in neutral spaces that market to anyone and everyone. The other exemption is with shared living areas, you are allowed to do female seeking female roommate, for example. Now, in terms of language that you use in advertising, there are some HUD guidelines, and these are very serious for your career. Avoid saying family-friendly neighborhood. That indicates only a family can live there. Walking distance to local amenities. That implies you've got to be, I think the term I've seen on there is able-bodied in order to buy that property. So you might have a few questions around actual words in advertising. And when it comes to advertising, this is really for your career. Focus on the property, not the person that's going to buy it. Do not call list. That's something an agent I want to have you be mindful of. Employee and independent contractor relationships. An employee is going to be someone who has a set work schedule. And in exchange for showing up on time and doing the same amount of hours a week, you're going to get a vacation package, an insurance package, and maybe some other benefits. An independent contractor is a relationship between a salesperson and a broker, or a broker associate and a broker. But they are independent for taking care of all of those things on their own. Paying different taxes for Social Security, Medicare, income tax. There's no withholding. Your benefits package for health, vacation, and any other long-term disability or anything like that. You're responsible for doing that on your own, but in exchange, your broker can't really make you do anything unless it's a law. They cannot require you to wear a t-shirt that says their brokerage on it. They can't require you to show up to a team meeting. Now, do I recommend you do those things? Absolutely. Do what your broker tells you, because success leaves clues. And if they're successful and you want to be successful, there's a proven path probably for their method. However, your contract does not say that you have to do those things. So a great example is, as an independent contractor, if you're paying for all these things on your own, and then you decide to set up a business entity for yourself, you create an LLC. So now Amy Schaefer isn't getting the commission income. Her LLC of Must Love Dogs Real Estate LLC is getting the payment. Does that change my relationship with my brokerage? No, it does not. It just changes who the check goes to, but it doesn't mean that the brokerage has to start offering those health benefits, 401k, anything of that nature. Doesn't change the relationship at all. Antitrust laws. One, I would know that the Sherman antitrust law, know that definition and look for keywords of no monopolies and allowing for the free flow of goods and services. Know the definition. And antitrust laws have been around since the late 1800s. The example that I gave you was John Rockefeller, the big oil man that owned Standard Oil. When he withdrew his patronage from the railroad companies because he had such a dominating business, it literally crashed the railroad companies to a point where it put them out of work, and it put so many other people out of work. It created one of our first depressions in our economy. And we don't want one person to have so much control that it would ruin our nation's economy. The other thing that we talked about with John Rockefeller that was happening is he had a oil distillery, right? That he was making kerosene. And that those distilleries, if I went to Pittsburgh and decided to open up one of my own called Amy Schaefer Distillery, he would have accused me of pirating his business. I'm allowed to set up a business wherever I want. I mean, just think about it. The last time you went to the grocery store, how many banks did you drive by? How many convenience stores did you drive by? That is up to them to decide whether they want to open a business in a community or not, based on income, demographics, population, whatever it might be. But we can't tell them, no, everyone is free to set up goods and services and be open in any market with any sort of clientele. Okay. So know the definition of it. Now, allocation of customers and markets is one category. The other three is price fixing, group boycott, and tie-in agreements, also known as tying, T-Y-I-N-G, on the state exam. Now, price fixing would be when two competitors got together and said, we're going to fix our price of doing business. And what they do then is they don't create any competition in the marketplace. So two big auction houses in New York did this, is the example that I gave. Christie's Auction Service, and there was another one. They got together and said they were going to set a commission for their auction services at, let's say, 6%, whatever the number was. Well, because it didn't allow consumers to go and price things out and make a decision based on competition, they actually had one of the largest antitrust lawsuits filed. And I believe they paid out over $500 million for it. Group boycott is when two businesses would refuse patronage from a third one in order to run them out of business. Okay. The last one then is a tie-in agreement, where we're requiring someone to do a piece of business with us in order to do the piece of business they really want. And in real estate, it happens like this. I've got a bare lot listed for sale. A builder comes to me and says, Amy, I want to buy this lot. And I say, I will only sell you this lot if when you build the house and you list it, I get that listing as well. Otherwise, if you're not going to give me that listing, you cannot buy this lot. To tie those two transactions together is illegal. Now, that builder can hire me to do both, of course, like I've said, pretty good agent. But they've got to be two separate transactions, not tied together. So real estate calculations. I had 6 on this last one. Here's my gentle, loving reminder for you about math. If you've got an attitude that says, I hate math, I'm bad at math, it was my worst subject in high school, I hate math, stop it. Stop it. You all are fully functioning adults with checking accounts, right? And you know how to balance your checking account. Like, you can figure out anything. And I want you to get excited about math, because here's the deal. This is how you figure your commission checks. And you want to know if your broker is paying you the right amount, right? So fall in love with math. I get feedback all the time that people cannot pass the exam because of the math. Well, on the one I took with 6 questions, that meant I could have still gotten a 74. If math was my only problem, I still could have gotten a 74 and passed that sucker with flying colors. So if you're blaming it on the math for failing, I'm going to be really blunt with you. You got other places you're missing information as well. There's other places on this list that we need to look. Now, here's the one thing about math. Use the process of elimination. And yes, they will give a math answer to mess with you a little bit. However, you could always use the answer to plug into the formula and work backwards as well. Excuse me. So use the process of elimination with these. Loan to value ratios. That's the amount you're borrowing versus the amount you're putting down. Again, discount points is going to be 1% of the amount being borrowed. Property taxes. We talked about this earlier with prepaid versus accrued items. Again, I think that they're going to have you use the 360-day year. So divide by 12 and then divide by 30. But the question, in my experience, it will say 360-day year in the exam to give you confidence that that is the right formula. So look for the word prorated. For prorations, look for the word prepaid. Again, that means the seller needs a credit. Accrued, or when they don't say anything, usually that's buyer needs the credit. That's accrued. Prepaid means the seller prepaid it. They need the credit. Commission and commission splits. What I would do in these splits is I would make that list like we did on the second day we were together. I would take the sales price by the commission. Don't forget how to do the decimal dance, which means if it's 5%, in your calculator, you'll put 0.05. That's your overall commission. If the question does not specify, assume that that commission is split 50-50 between the seller side representation and the buyer side representation. So I would make a list for seller's broker, seller's agent, buyer's broker, and buyer's agent. And they may give you names like Mary, Charlie, Sam. I would write that down there next to it. A selling agent is usually representing the buyer. Listing agent is usually representing the seller, if you see that language in some test questions. What I would do is I would do the math for all four of those people. Because I've seen where some samples, like in our books and study materials, long question, right? You think we're talking about broker Mary, and all of a sudden they want to know about broker Sam. So I like to use that so I can really focus on this long-winded question and story. What are they really asking me to answer? Transfer fee is what we know as revenue stamps here in Iowa. Those are going to be calculated at, for example, $1.60 per 1,000. So you take the purchase price divided by the dollar amount, either maybe 500 or 1,000 in this example. Then you'll get the number of taxable units multiplied by that tax rate. So for example, if I'm buying a house, for easy math, for $100,000, I've got a tax rate of $1.60 per 1,000. I divide 100,000 by 1,000 and I get 100 taxable units. Multiply that by $1.60 and my transfer tax would be $160. Number 7 is a big one. Let's get excited about it. This is the principal, interest, tax, and insurance payments. That's your PITI. And there's a chart that you will use that is at the test center, laminated. It was taped down to the desk the last time I was there. And at the top of it, it said, calculated per 1,000 of a loan. So it even gave me a little hint on how to do the math. But that chart is already preset so that it helps you calculate the principal and interest payment on a property. So all you need to know is the amount being borrowed, which means you might need to do a loan to value equation first. But you'll do the amount borrowed divided by 1,000. Then that number of units you will multiply by a factor number that you will find based on the test question of the interest rate and the term of the loan. The term of the loan in the book that we've been using was 15 and 30 years. At the exam test center, it's probably going to be more extensive. The terms will be 15, 20, 25, 30, I think 35 and 40 years. So it's just going to be more, but it's still the same chart. So we would take the amount being borrowed divided by 1,000 and then take that number multiplied by the mortgage factor number based on the interest rate and term of the loan. Multiply those, you get your principal and interest payment. Okay? So you could have some that just tell you the amount of the loan. You've got to figure out the principal and interest payment. You could have something that you've got to figure out the loan to value, so the amount being borrowed, then do the calculation. You could have one that says The assessed value is 200, the appraised value was 205, and the purchase price was 195. What number are you going to use with 20% down? So now you've got to figure which one of those to use, and you're going to use whichever's less between the appraisal and the purchase price. So in that example, we would use 195 minus our down payment. Then the amount being borrowed, we would do our mortgage factor chart calculation from. Another style of question is they may have you figure two payments and they want to know the difference between the two. And the last example that I'm going to prepare you for is an example where they say, if you're borrowing X amount of dollars, what is the maximum term of the loan you could have and still keep the payment under $900 a month? So that means you got to do the calculation at 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years. And whatever payment is less than 900 without going over, that's your answer. Okay. There is your math summary for you.